Hello, I'm Mark Abssy, Head of Indexing at Tematica Research, and welcome to the week ahead. So, this was the week that everybody exhaled, and somebody at 2 in the morning brought another keg of beer to the party in the form of good PPI and CPI numbers. So, here we go, we're off to the races again, right? Now, it's interesting because, yes, broad indexes continue to push into 52-week and multi-year and all-time highs. Um, you know, Streaks were broken in terms of losing weeks and all these kinds of things, and that's great. Um, Interestingly, uh, you know, was it Tuesday? Thursday. Thursday brought us a retail sales number that was great. It was very strong, and that even put a little more fuel on the fire, if you wish, for stocks. And we ended the week pretty strongly. Now, what was interesting is that a little earlier in the week, Home Depot came out and basically took down their guidance a little. Said, "Hey, we see a weakening consumer ahead, so everybody, just be mindful for futures numbers and future guidance." Um, you know, there was some attention paid to that, but frankly, with those PPI and CPI numbers, and then again on Thursday with the retail sales coming out, people kind of forgot or decided to ignore Home Depot's comments. Now it's interesting. My partner Chris Versace had a hit earlier today, and he made a point which I thought was interesting. Right, the retail sales number basically captured July, as it does every month. But he brought up the fact of, look, there was a Prime Day, there were other sales at the same time going on, and kind of his speculation is that it could very well be that there was a lot of back to school spending that was brought forward in July because of those sales. And so, we're going to obviously have to wait until September to get the August report to see A, if he was right, and if he was, what the impact is, right? Now, good news for us is looking ahead to next week. I mean, earnings is so full of retail names coming out that we're going to get, I think, kind of either a confirmation of what Home Depot was saying or a confirmation of Thursday's retail sales number, right? We've got some big names reporting: TJX, Target, Ross Stores, Dollar Tree, Burlington Stores, Macy's, if I hadn't mentioned them, BJ's, of course, is a big name in that area as well. We do have some more specialized names like Coty, Estee Lauder, Urban Outfitters. So it'll be interesting to see on the margins what those guys are seeing as well. Um, Following up on Home Depot last week, or this past week, we'll also get earnings from Lowe's, and then we'll also see Toll Brothers a little later in the week as well. So lots of consumer, some housing figures as well. In terms of economic data for next week, it's a pretty light week. Um, we'll get the minutes from the last Fed meeting on Wednesday. And then Friday, honestly, the only kind of numbers of import, um, in terms of kind of top line numbers, we'll get new permits, new building permits, and we'll get new sales, right? New housing sales. And the new housing sales numbers, there's expectations of about 10,000 units more, which would push that up to about 627,000. Okay. Um, when we look at the sectors, of course, everything had a positive week. Um, and if there was any relative weakness, it was in real estate, which was only up about 12 bips on the week. Technology, consumer discretionary, strong weeks, right? Of course, that's where kind of 2/3 of the Mag 7 live. So there were some good numbers there. Financials, third on the list, and so on down the line. Um, Interestingly, and those of you that follow this, of course, you know that there were spot Bitcoin ETFs issued or approved and issued earlier this year. A few weeks ago, there were also Ethereum spot Ethereum products that were issued as well. And it's interesting because there was a huge gyration in crypto the week before with the kind of Japanese carry trade unwinding and then rewinding, I guess. So we did see Bitcoin down about 2% this week. Fear not, it's still up about 42% on the year. And then Ethereum up about 125 bips, bringing its year to date about 14.5%. One of the other things which is interesting to us is that in as much as we're seeing a lot of kind of good vibes and good news on inflation, on the consumer, um, gold is still making all-time highs, right? And it's interesting because when you look at the World Gold Council and their figures, in Q2 they pointed to what they call OTC gold buying and central bank purchases as being the main drivers to really push gold demand in the second quarter. And from what we can see, that those seem to be still pushing ahead in Q3. And it's interesting because, in as much as equities are being driven higher on Fed cut speculation, central banks are continuing to stockpile gold for a mix of inflation hedging and U.S. dollar related concerns, including, sidestepping U.S. government sanctioned by using gold to transact on global markets, right? Now, in any event, you know, given the specter of rate cut, I wouldn't say the specter, but given that rate cuts are definitely in the offing, there's a real possibility that we could soon return to the not so distant days of everything goes up. Because, as to paraphrase another election year quote, it's the rate cuts, stupid. So, with those rate cuts, we're going to see equities get juiced. With those rate cuts, we're going to see long bonds starting to rise. And then, of course, the underlying gold and other, the underlying gold drivers are still present and are going to be pushing those higher. Now, speaking of rate cuts, it's interesting because when you look at the curve and look what's kind of baked into the curve, this week's CPI and PPI numbers move the odds of a 50 basis point cut from kind of 50% to 25% later in the week. So about a week ago, odds were 50% chance of 50 bips, 50% chance of 25 bips. By Friday, they're standing at pretty much a 75% chance of just 25, and then a 25% chance of 50. And when you look further down the calendar, definitely leaning towards 25 bips in November. And interestingly, although there's not kind of a main weighting, they're kind of equally weighted at 40% chance each, but there's a 40% chance the curve has priced in of either another 25 bip cut or a 50 bip cut. And my take is that that's just down to whatever election polling results are showing on the day, right? And so I think we're going to see some more of that in the future. Certainly, as the election unfolds, we get these debates, but also as GDP revisions continue to come, and we get more and more data about the economy, about the consumer. So, again, this past week was good, net positive. Next week, again, we're going to get a lot more information about the consumer, and as we said in other videos, the consumer is about 70% of GDP, and so they are important. So it is interesting because the last year and a half, it's basically been Mag 7 and big tech pushing things. We've seen those names kind of come off the gas pedal a little. And a few videos ago, I was wondering, well, best case scenario is that as big tech steps back a little, that the consumer steps up. And so far, that's kind of what we're seeing, right? When we look at things from a model perspective, again, on the week, space economy model has really been doing it. Another strong week for AST Space Mobile. You'll recall about a month or so ago, they inked a number of agreements to bring satellite coverage to Verizon, I think AT&T, and T-Mobile. as regular way calling. You may recall a couple of years ago, Apple came out and said, "Hey, if you're in an SOS situation, emergency situation, you can now use satellite calling," and that's great. But they are now, other carriers are now looking to bring that as part of kind of regular spectrum, regular bandwidth that they can use satellite service. Along with that, tangential to that are a CHIPS Act model, right? Those stimulus dollars are flowing and continue to flow. So we've seen some good results there. Basically the bulk of models here had between like a 2 and 4% a week. So some good opportunities there. Of course, our market hedge model after its spectacular week a couple weeks ago was off, but honestly that's to be expected. And so, that's actually, depending on your point of view, is actually a good thing. So, again, we're looking for a lot of updates on the consumer. We're going to get some housing figures at the end of the week, and that's about it. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you soon.